Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of the main stories affecting the Sikh community around the world, and we take a closer look at the unprecedented rise in anti-Sikh hate crime now appearing in North America and indeed Europe. Just what is going on and what is driving it? Well, all this and more on today's show, but joining me as always is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. We hope everyone's having an amazing morning so far. By all means, we want you to let us know how your day is going. Say hello or let us know story ideas that you would like us to cover here on the program. Remember, you're as much and as valuable to the show as we are, so make sure that you send your messages. Stick around to the end of the show, see what messages and what posts made it to the air on this episode. And with that, I'll send it back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and together James and I will be covering all the stories affecting the Sikh community around the world. And indeed, at the end of the show, we will take a look at loads of great comments which have been pouring in over the last few days, so thank you as always for those. Right, James, lots to get through today. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
We are going to start off, Angus, with the lone survivor of that Boeing 787 crash that took place 4 months ago. He is finally speaking out, and he spoke exclusively to the BBC. I thought I would share that story, and then we'll just talk a bit about that very briefly as we move on and have other headlines to cover. So let's jump right into this story by the BBC.
The survivor of the Air India plane crash has told BBC he feels he's the luckiest man alive. In June, a plane travelling from Ahmedabad to London crashed within seconds of taking off. All but one of the 242 people on board were killed, as well as 19 on the ground. Viswash Kumar Ramesh survived the disaster in which his brother died. He's been speaking to our Midlands correspondent, Navtesh Johal.
The sole survivor. How this one passenger walked away from a plane crash that killed everyone else on board is a question no one, not even he, can really answer.
It is miracle, innit? Still I'm not believe. I'm only one survivor.
The Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad in June killed 260 people. Visvash Kumar Ramesh was the sole survivor aboard that flight.
You came out on your own. How did you jump from the aircraft?
I'm not jumping. Okay. I just walk out, innit?
But sat just a few seats away from him on the plane was his younger brother Ajay, who was killed. In the aftermath, as the 39-year-old dealt with the world's attention, he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and has recently returned to his home in Leicester.
Thank you for speaking.
The BBC and other media were invited to the home of one of his advisors for the first interviews with Visvash Kumar in the UK. The two advisors sat next to him, and a documentary crew were also present and filming in the room.
Visvash Kumar.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking to us. First question. How are you doing?
Still not good. I'm finding myself very difficult, like physically and mentally, and also my family as well.
Throughout our interview, there were questions that he could not answer.
When did you realize, when you were on that flight, that something was wrong?
It is very painful for me to explain that happened still. But I can't say anything about that now.
So many people believe that what happened to you was a miracle. Do you feel like you are the luckiest man alive?
Yes. It is miracle, innit?
Is that difficult? Because on the one hand you say you believe you are the luckiest man alive, that what happened to you was a miracle. On the other hand...
I'm luckiest man, but also I lost everything. My brother, for me. I lost my brother, innit? My brother is my backbone.
At times, he became emotional.
Visvash Kumar, you're okay to continue?
Okay.
Thank you.
So as you can see, he is very emotional in recalling what happened or unable to recall it completely within the context of the interview. But what he also has really brought forward is the fact that his family has really suffered as well with the loss of his brother. And unfortunately, he is dealing with a lot of pain, whether it's in his back, his knee, and other locations that from the injuries that he suffered. So he has a very, very long road of healing from the physical scars and the physical injuries. But that emotional scar that he is dealing with goes much deeper. When you are part of a group, or where somebody dies, or even just with someone else, and the other person dies from such a horrific incident, there's what's called survivor's guilt, and that he will feel guilt that he survived when everybody else on that plane did not, especially when it comes to his family and his brother. And you could see how emotional he was. His brother meant a lot to him. They were very close, from what I understand. That is a very painful recollection to him, to know that he didn't make it out, but that his brother didn't make it out, but he did. So it is very interesting to see that he is finally speaking out in the BBC there, but also that they had a documentary film crew there. And I hope that, that this is a healing journey for him. But again, a lot of people, if they do not have the proper tools to deal with that emotional baggage or that emotional trauma, then it can be something that not only weighs them down for the rest of their life, but can shorten it substantially, whether that's through actions of their own or just through the deterioration of their mental health ability or state, and their physical state as a correlation to that. When it comes to the depression, the anxiety, the survivor's guilt, and everything else that he's going to experience. So I really do hope that they focus on that just as much as they're focusing on trying to get these documentaries produced and out there. I think they have to really be careful and make sure that they tend to his mental health first and foremost on all of that. Now, as we continue on, we will move on to another story. And if you do want to, before I do move on though, if you want to see the entire interview that the BBC did, you can always go to the BBC website and just search it up. And you can watch the entire interview. It is quite emotional and quite eye-opening there. But again, that's on the BBC's website that you can find that. As we take a shift over to the Metro Vancouver and Surrey communities, as well as Abbotsford, yet once again, we are seeing the numbers skyrocketing. Even though the Lawrence Bishnoi gang has been declared a terrorist organization by the Government of Canada, and they are being treated that way, there is still a skyrocketing number. In Surrey alone, the number now of extortion attempts has climbed up to 74. And half of those, and actually just over half of them, have involved gunfire. Now, this is a big concern for the Mayor of Surrey, Brenda Locke, where she has gone to the provincial legislature to talk to politicians, and to talk to different people, the Solicitor General, the Attorney General, and she's talking to the federal counterparts as well, trying to gain another 150 police officers from the national and provincial levels to be targeting these extortion attempts. Now, in the most recent events, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang has once again been claiming responsibility for several of these attacks. Here, in this last week, we saw the assassination of Darshan Sassi, who is an Abbotsford businessman, a millionaire who was leaving his home. Apparently, a car had been parked out on the street for several hours. When Mr. Sassi went to his vehicle and got in, the assailant jumped out of a small sedan vehicle, ran up to the window of Mr. Sassi's pickup truck, and opened fire into the vehicle. I understand that there were about 8 or 9 shots fired into the vehicle, killing Mr. Sassi on sight. His family was very close by. They came out and said that there were no extortion attempts, no blackmail, or anything else that really they could understand would contribute to something like this. However, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang did come out later and say that he was in fact being targeted by the gang, and they were using him as a prominent leader in the community, a prominent and very well-off businessman in the area. as well as a philanthropist who contributes a lot to charitable organizations within the Abbotsford and British Columbia regions. Now, with this said, they wanted to send a clear and decisive message and a real message of terror to the community, saying that if someone of this stature can be taken down by the Lawrence Bishnoi gang for not following through on the extortion attempts or orders, that essentially nobody in the community is safe. This has rocked the community yet once again. And this happened just last week. When we look at that, there were other shootings as well. What made this one really quite telling, though, is that it happened in broad daylight. They did not care about there being witnesses. And in fact, it appears that they may have actually wanted the witnesses so they could tell the community what's going on in terms of sending that message of fear to anybody else who may be the victim of attempted extortion, to say, listen, if you do not cooperate, this very well could happen to you or your family. And that message is being sent very clearly. Again, that's why Brenda Locke is trying to get another 150 police officers. Now, we know that they are still in the transition in terms of the Surrey Police Service being the new city and municipal force, transitioning from the old model of the RCMP policing the city. That transition, many will indicate that they have concerns that it has left cracks in the foundation of the justice system or the law enforcement system that's in play in Surrey, and that has had a contributing factor to the brazenness of these criminals to feel that they can get away with this within the community. Now, of course, as we look at that, there was another targeted shooting of a home in Surrey as well, and that was on Sunday, October the 26th, where a very prominent and well-known Punjabi singer, Chani Natin, his home was shot up as well. And this is in just in the real residential communities. People were home at the time. It was just through fate or luck or whatever you want to call it, a miracle, that nobody was injured when they shot all these bullets into the house and people were in there. It very well could have been tragic. And people that are shooting from outside the house don't know if there's little children, babies, whatever. They don't know who's inside and they can't tell. They're just randomly shooting at these houses for the psychological impact and the fear that they are putting into the community to intimidate them to cooperate with any extortion attempts. Again, this is about the 6th event in the last week, several events happening in the same night. So again, it is a real fear in the community that the police are still not able to get a handle on it, even though they have taken the extraordinary step to label the Bishnoi gang as a terrorist organization. Now, the police are also sending out a cautionary message to the community that even though people online are contributing it or claiming responsibility on behalf of the Bishnoi gang, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are. They could be doing that just to instill fear, and falsely claiming that they are members. However, this one here, there is some indication from others involved that this definitely was targeted and a part of that organization. So again, it raises major concerns, not just here in Surrey and Abbotsford, in the Fraser Valley and Metro Vancouver, but of course, we're seeing the other locations such as Brampton, Ontario, Mississauga, Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, and such as well being impacted by this just scourge of criminals and these lowlifes that are really, really targeting a community that is peaceful, that wants to contribute to the betterment of society, that has been a pillar and a solid rock when it came to building the nation and the infrastructure of this country. And now they live in fear. And it is time that the law enforcement at all levels, provincial, federal, and municipal, pull out all the stops to prevent this from going on, to catch these people, and to make examples of them. In one of the latest shootings, there were 2 males that have been arrested. They are also being investigated for links to other open files of extortion within the area, but the police have not yet been able to confirm whether or not they've made that definitive link. But again, the police have confirmed that they are investigating them for further involvement within the other activities in the community. As we move on, ladies and gentlemen, over in Brampton, in Ontario, in Ottawa, my apologies, they are working towards the referendum coming up later this month. And of course, the Khalistan referendum has been very successful in all of the cities in which it has been held. I've been fortunate enough to attend the referendum here in Vancouver twice. Because they had 2 dates, and then also in Calgary, Alberta. And what an amazing, fun event. Just people really enjoying and excited to have their voices heard in this referendum. Now, again, it's coming up in Ottawa at later in the month, and they are still seeking volunteers. If you are interested in volunteering, you can reach out to the organizers at 1-437-452-3608 or 437-452-5415. Once again, if you're interested in volunteering, give them a call and reach out. They would love to hear from you. And on that note, the Ottawa on Halloween, there was another rally held in this city, and this had to do with the taking over or sieging the Ottawa Consulate and High Commission. Now, Dinesh Patnaik is guarded by the RCMP, and the protest of the Under Siege, that was a depiction that they had what was called a brazen depiction, actually, of Shahid Bint Singh and, of course, Shahid Satwant Singh. And that was the shooting of Indira Gandhi, all of that event that was played out here in certain signs, posters, and everything else so that they could raise awareness. And they actually have life-size cutouts there as well of various incidents in that history. So again, it was an effective and very prominent event that raised a lot of awareness, and that's what it's all about, bringing that tragedy to light and celebrating the shaheeds that were able to stop what some call another genocide that had been planned and that was prevented when they took the life of Indira Gandhi. So let's take a quick peek at this here. So as you can see, they had a very impressive turnout, and the fact that the High Commissioner had to have police protection just shows that the message is getting across. Although it was a peaceful demonstration, it does show that whether or not it was for the for cosmetic or public image reasons to say, oh, they're so scary, we need the police to protect us. And chances are that's what it is, because at the end of the day, it is a peaceful protest. They are taking siege, meaning that they are protesting. They're trying to stop any services from going on at that location by protesting and rallying out front. But again, in a public area, they've got lots of signage, lots of posters that tell a lot of stories. And let's face it, folks, anything that they can do to raise awareness of the atrocities that have been bestowed against the Sikh people is a huge win when the community learns more, and especially when the wider community can really ask questions and know what's going on. And we see a lot of that, Angus, and that's what it really is about, is that public awareness that I think they are winning a big part of the awareness and education battle here in Canada.
Yes, I mean, well done as always to all those guys who turned up with their khalistan flags, their drums, kept it peaceful, kept it enthusiastic, and kept it, most of all, visible. And that's really what it's all about. Yes, it's interesting that, of course, the Hindutva online mob, they're trying to draw these parallels saying, oh, look, our Dinesh Patnaik, our Indian High Commissioner, needs bodyguards because of this threat. Well, unfortunately, because what they're trying to do is compare the situation of Indira Gandhi, who was assassinated by the two Singhs back in 1984. But what they don't actually say as part of that story, they've only cherry-picked one simple part of that story. Why was Indira Gandhi assassinated? Well, that's because 41 years ago today, one of the most awful genocides perpetrated against any people on this planet was coming to a close after 2 or 3 days of just sheer, utter, bloody murder, cold-blooded torture and murder of men, women, and even children. And that followed the assassination of Indira Gandhi, which in turn was itself an act of vengeance for Operation Blue Star, in which anything between 10 and 20,000, again, men, women and children, were killed in cold blood in the Golden Temple. So again, they sort of tend to forget the reason why Indira Gandhi was assassinated, and rightly, as you said, James, and alluded to, is she was also planning Operation Shanti, which again was another operation designed to cause mass murder of Sikhs across the Punjab. So unfortunately, they tend to gloss over that part of where the Congress government and the Gandhi dynasty were presiding over genocide. And I would also refer our audience to podcasts I did last week, particularly with Dr. Singh Sandhu, where we talked about various genocides since 1947 against the Sikh people. So and again, just to wrap that part up, is it's a well done to all the guys in Canada who turn out on such a regular basis with their khalistan flags. Obviously, it's building up to a bit of a crescendo now with the Ottawa referendum event happening. So well done. But as always, the appeal is keep it calm, keep it enthusiastic, always keep a smile on your faces, keep it very positive, and as I said, always very visible, because these things really do have an impact. It's great to see. And again, it provokes the general public outside the community to say, who are these people? What are they here for? What is this khalistan? And the questions are asked, and that gives you that great opportunity to spread the good word and the good message about what khalistan is all about, and therefore get more and more people in support of the whole concept. So keep that up. Of course, the organised crime. I mean, we've covered this story itself, and it is sad, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But again, it's very indicative of this multilateral attack on the Sikh community. Again, I'm going to talk about that more in a moment. But what I think the interesting point you brought out there, James, is this deliberate idea of making it as public as possible. They do, and again, we often have these videos of these Indians attacking khalistan people, or attacking Khalistanis, attacking their homes, attacking their business, etc. But they do tend to like to put it on video and then circulate it around social media. And there are sort of two elements to this. Firstly, it's a PR exercise on their behalf, saying this is who we are. Look, this is what we get up to. We're badasses, as they say. So don't cross us. That's very much the part of the message. But then, of course, there is this sort of side to it, which is a little bit silly, because all you're doing is gifting evidence to the Canadian law enforcement. But again, that's why you're criminals, because you don't tend to think through that whole process. And then finally, the sole survivor. Weirdly, a friend of the family many years ago, from the 1960s, went through a similar situation. He was a sole survivor of a large airliner that crashed in, I think it was Jordan. And he very rarely talked about it. And to be honest, I never asked him about it. Clearly, it was a very sensitive subject. But there is this survivor's guilt, and it's an extraordinary story. And it really just comes down to your school of thought. If you're very spiritual, then you think, well, the hand of God was clearly protecting him, or it was just simply one of those weird probability things. He was sitting in, I think it was seat 11A or 11B, and just through a sheer pot luck, the way the aircraft broke up. His seat just happened to be in a spot where he could literally almost just fall out of the wreckage and run away and survive, whilst the rest sadly didn't make it. And the question, are you emotional about it? Of course he's emotional about it. He's gonna be traumatized for the rest of his life. But I just find it the most extraordinary story, and it is very easy to read in. I mean, I come from a very scientific background. I look at it from almost just a very scientific. Well, of course, just through sheer probability. If a plane breaks up in a certain way, then somebody's going to be sitting in a seat that just happens to be next to the great crack in the fuselage that you can, again, just by forces, fall out of it. Or alternatively, then you can be very spiritual about this and say, yeah, God was looking after him for a greater purpose. He could interpret this very easily, as many do in similar situations, saying, I have been brought back for a greater purpose. So it'd be interesting to see where his trajectory of his life follows. But yes, it's an incredible story, James.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Angus. We'll have to watch and see how he progresses in terms of his life. If he kind of goes into a private withdrawn state, then great, we'll respect that. But if he does great things, we'll be sure to report on that as well, to bring that to light and let people know how he's doing. But again, it is such it's a fork in the road that he can go either way at this point, and I think he's a long way from finding his direction. He's still coming to grips. It's been 4 months, but in reality, for his recovery, not just his physical recovery, but that mental health recovery, Angus, is going to take a lot longer. And especially, looking at his family, his mother, and other people in the family, and, just wondering if they're thinking, why was it this son, not the other? The weirdest places the mind can take him, and it's not through any logic or intentional thought. It's just how the mind works, especially after it suffered such a deep and devastating trauma.
Indeed. So our thoughts with him and, of course, his family, and fingers crossed that time is the greatest healer, and it does heal his the terrible trauma he's suffered. Anyway, James, let's move on. And I'm going to talk about, in my podcast, one of my podcasts last week with Dr. Sandy, we did talk about how the Sikh community, since 1947, has been the target of a whole sequence of genocides, attacks, hatred, everything from primarily the Indian state for reasons that we've gone into on many occasions. But of course, it's not just Sikhs in India and in the Punjab particularly that have been targeted. And in recent times, there is this unprecedented, it seems, rise in attacks, multilateral attacks against the Sikh community right across the diaspora. It's not happening just in India now, it's happening right across the diaspora. I'm going to start off by focusing here in the UK. And these are stories that we've covered to quite a large extent. There have been a well-documented and well-reported frightening increase in hate crimes against our Sikh community here in the UK. Now, a few weeks ago, we had a terrible rape of a young lady in the Midlands here in the UK. The Midlands, of course, is home to a large diaspora community of our Sikhs. And one of the ladies, a young lady in her 20s, was attacked and raped. Terrible thing, a terrible incident. And again, it caused outrage, not just in the Sikh community, but of course in the wider British community, because it was a hate crime. It was specifically a hate crime. This lady was attacked and was raped by allegedly two guys who then made these terrible racist comments as part of the attack. So it was a very clear hate crime. Sadly, last week there was another lady, again in her 20s, in the same general area. It was in the Midlands in the UK again. It was another Punjabi lady, another Sikh, a Kaur, who was attacked and raped in another racially aggravated attack. Now, West Midlands Police, who are the police force, law enforcement in that particular area, said that in Walsall, the Park Hall area of Walsall, again in the Midlands, in the early evening of Saturday night, a woman was attacked at a nearby property by a man who she didn't know. He was described as white, in his 30s, short hair, dark clothing, and in fact there is a video which I'll show you in a moment of this gentleman. And since then, the force has said that, the quote was, it was an appalling attack on a young woman, and the police were, of course, doing everything they can to find the man behind it. And they're saying the following multiple lines of inquiry. It's vital that we get to hear from anyone who saw a man acting suspiciously in the area at the time. Well, fortunately, as things unfolded, it is a small community in the West Midlands, and it turned out that this guy... This guy actually was tracked down. This is the video. This is some CCTV from the actual scene, and this was released at the time. of that attack. And this was the guy that they were after, and they did actually find the guy. And he, as we go on to the next video in a moment, the guy actually turns out to be a guy called John Ashby. He's 32 years old. He's of no fixed address. So again, he's a homeless guy, clearly a bit of a chancer by all accounts. And he's attacked this lady. And I'm going to play you another video. Where are we? Here we go. And this is outside the court. They did catch him. And so Ashby appeared in court just a couple of days ago. He was charged with sexual assault. He was charged with intentional strangulation, racially aggravated assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, and robbery in relation to the same victim. And apparently in court, there was all sorts of shenanigans went on in court. He was quite abusive in court. But of course, well done to the Sikh community. The local Sikh community in the West Midlands turned out at the court. And I know various journalists were there. I couldn't make it, sadly. But there were reports came out that in the gallery, in the court gallery, there were many Sikhs from the local community there. And I think they took the opportunity to speak their mind. And apparently there was a bit of fairly angry exchange, of verbal exchanges between the community and Ashby himself. And the police, they have said in the locality that they have visited the local Gurdwaras in Walsall. They spoke with the local leaders about women's safety generally, what measures men can take to make women feel more comfortable. And as they said, we need to continue to maintain these conversations and how we build on women's safety in the community. Now, I find this really quite disturbing because women are becoming this almost this pawn in these terrible hate incidents. Women are vulnerable. They are vulnerable people in our society. And the fact that we are now, and our law enforcement is now having to go to extra lengths to protect the women in our society is a terrible, terrible indictment of our so-called first world society. In a first world society, we should not be having to go to extra lengths to protect the women in our society against stuff like this. Again, I find it deeply uncomfortable. And I was going to play you. This is another BBC. This is just a quick report on this particular incident. But there's an interview with Jas Singh afterwards, which is particularly why I want to just play this one.
Police have arrested a man after a woman was raped in Walsall in what police are treating as a racially aggravated attack. The woman in her 20s was assaulted in the Park Hall area on Saturday evening. A 32-year-old man was arrested this morning in the Perry Bar area of Birmingham on suspicion of rape. The Sikh Federation say they're concerned to hear about another alleged racially motivated attack after a Sikh woman was raped in Albury last month, but police are not linking the two.
As a community, we've been handing out rape alarms to young students and raising awareness within our own community to be extra vigilant. But these incidences are not helping because these are real, these have happened.
So again, I just find it deeply disturbing that we're actually having to hand out rape alarms to our women in our society, particularly in our Sikh community. It's deeply disturbing. And then again, just overnight, another report of a woman in her 50s was attacked, as a Punjabi woman in her 50s, a Sikh Kaur, was attacked by white men using a metal bar and a stun device in the early evening on the 27th of October, that was last week, in Wolverhampton. Again, this is in the Midlands. Is confirmed as the third Kaur targeted in racial violence since September. And it was confirmed, this news was actually confirmed by one of our Sikh MPs, Preet Kaur Gill, and of course in tandem with the Sikh Federation UK. After police, this is interesting, after police kept the information from the public previously. Now, both Preet Kaur Gill and the Sikh Federation are lobbying for better police documentation of anti-Sikh hate crimes, because of course we have an issue, is that there is a belief that not enough of these crimes are actually being reported. And of course, as I've talked often in the past, is we can't do anything about these crimes. We cannot bring in the right policy, legal frameworks, the right legislation, even the political will, if we don't know these crimes are happening. These, of course, are all very high profile, but it is so important that anybody in the community who is a target of these crimes must report them, however minor, to the police so that they can be documented, they can be added to the statistics, because it is those statistics that then ensure that law is brought in and resources, legal resources, are brought in. There's more bobbies on the street, as we call it here in the UK. But these things must be reported. But again, sadly, as this shows up here, yet more attacks on our vulnerable community. Now, it's not just in the UK, and this again, there's a really clear pattern developing, and I've noticed this even in recent weeks, never mind months, but it's certainly been building up over recent months. Our Sikh community is under assault. As I said, firstly in India, that's again, we talk about that on almost daily basis, but across the diaspora, it is under assault from the Hindutva forces. We do know, again, Hindutva is the vanguard. They are the sharp end of transnational oppression. We do know that the Bishnoi gang, etc., are again at this sharp end of transnational oppression, all designed to pour hatred, aggression, and violence against our communities right round the diaspora. And of course, particularly here in the UK, fortunately, we are addressing it, as indeed they are overseas. And again, just over, again last week, just at the end of last week, it's even reached, fortunately, a political level. And there was our all-party parliamentary group for British Sikhs did hold an event in the British Parliament. Again, it was reinforced by the Sikh Federation UK, who again is one of our bigger lobbying groups here in the UK. And this again was designed to time just before the anniversary, the 41st anniversary of the Sikh genocide, 41 years ago. And I've not had any reports, so there hasn't been any press releases yet about the outcome of this event. But again, it's just highlighting just how serious this is getting. Because again, as I said, the rise of the far right, the anti-Sikh hate lobby is growing for whatever reasons. And reasons, again, we talked a lot about immigration, etc., etc. But as I said, this is not restricted to the UK now. James, you just reported on these attacks in Canada. And again, the blame has been laid at the door of the Bishnoi gang. But this again was just another Sikh, a high prominent Sikh businessman who was murdered. So this is not low profile stuff. This is pretty serious stuff. And again, it was just before a popular Sikh artist was shot at. Again, 2 more incidents claimed by the Bishnoi terror group. And interesting that the terminology in the press now is it's the Bishnoi terror group. It's no longer the Bishnoi criminal gang, it's the Bishnoi terror group. An important difference there, as we've reported on. And of course, it was Darshang Sin Sazi, a 68-year-old businessman living in Canada for decades. He was shot dead outside his home. So again, it's a very high profile, very personal attack outside his home. And then likewise, we have the Punjabi singer Chani Natan, who was shot at in his home. But again, it was all filmed, and that film went viral, that mobile phone video went viral right across social media. Again, as these things tend to with the Hindutva forces, they like to film these events, again, to spread terror and spread the fact that they are attacking the Sikh community. And surprisingly, it spread across Indian media. And again, what I find interesting is it came with confessions about both incidents circulated across social media. And one of the figures that has actually laid claim to be behind this is Goldie Dillon, who again has gone onto Facebook to say it was us behind it. Again, part of this criminal PR, this sort of public relations exercise on behalf of the terror, what is now a terror community in Canada. So again, very, very concerning. And it's not just restricted to Canada, because James, as you reported, there are so many incidents now happening in Canada on an almost daily basis. In the USA, the same thing is happening. And in fact, again, amidst this sort of global concern of this rising anti-Sikh hate crime, is that Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Kaur Dhinal, again, this is a high-profile US corps who's become actually part of the US administration. She has likewise had to come out publicly, again in a very high-profile media campaign, to condemn these rising attacks on what she calls law-abiding Sikhs, simply because of who they are. And she is actually she's the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights in the US, her statement came after widespread, pretty bigoted, I would say, reactions to a reckless driving incident. Again, this is another incident, a sad incident that happened with a Sikh truck driver in Ontario in California on the 21st of October. It's about a couple of weeks ago. This was a guy, Jasanpreet Singh. He was a young guy. Sadly, another illegal immigrant into the US. He was a 21-year-old from Yuba City. And he was in control of a truck when it sped through slow traffic, and it destroyed a whole sequence of vehicles and left 3 dead. It was a terrible incident. He sadly as the story unfolded, he entered the US illegally 3 years ago, and he was drunk. He was intoxicated during the collision. I mean, idiot. Just words cannot describe the idiocy of his act, which of course left 3 dead. And what it's done, unsurprisingly, has created an enormously furious backlash. Already with an already anti-immigrant political climate that exists in the United States. And this comes on the back of another illegal immigrant. This was Harjinder Singh, another Sikh truck driver who had that terrible incident in Florida, again, where I think 2 or 3 people were killed in an incident where he tried to cross a freeway with his truck. And this car full of another family piled into the side of it. And again, this sort of family was wiped out. Again, an incident. And again, what it's done is it's gifted ammunition to those who want to target not just the Sikh community, but any immigrant community in the US. And of course, unsurprisingly, reports of racist incidents targeting particularly Sikhs across the United States have increased. Notably, the statistics are really showing this, these rising hate crimes, particularly since that Florida incident. And of course, behind a lot of the growth of the hate crime is Hindutva. Of course, this is gifting Hindutva with all the ammunition they need to get across social media to whip up the hatred, to whip up not just the right-wing extremists. The right-wing extremists are basically the useful idiots. They are the proxy idiots helping Hindutva do their job for them, because they then spread the hatred across social media, which in turn then starts to influence just ordinary, decent people who, of course, they go on Facebook and Instagram, they see these posts, they don't look behind the story, they don't actually dig deep into the truth of the matter, they just see, oh, yes, it's another Sikh who's just killed more people and he was an illegal immigrant. So they take the story at face value, and suddenly you can feel that shift in sentiment amongst ordinary, decent people. And this is what sadly is happening now. Again, it is absolutely gifting ammunition to the enemies of the Sikh communities right across not just the US, but it's happening in Canada, it's happening in Europe, is that again, the root causes of many of these problems, and again, I'm going to come on to the immigration debate. We don't need to go down that road too much because, again, we've talked at massive length about it regularly. But there are forces happening from a multilateral approach, whether it is illegal immigration, whether it is organised crime coming out of India, whether it is an organised agenda from the Indian state manifesting itself through Hindutva and the RSS network of proxy criminals, of proxy killers, or whether it's infiltrating academia, media, industry, whatever. But there is this combined multilateral attack on particularly the Sikh community. It's not just the Sikh community, it is also other ethnic communities right across our own nations, whether it's North America or Europe. But ultimately, the Sikh community is particularly being targeted because they are very high profile. Articles of faith mean they wear a turban. So they are quite often mistaken for Muslims, for example. So when an idiot right-wing extremist, again, goes on social media, sees another family wiped out by, sadly, a truck driver or whoever, or sees a terrorist incident perpetrated by Islamic extremists, it almost doesn't matter. They just walk down the street and they see a Sikh wearing a turban. They think, oh, it's one of them. And they attack them. These dreadful rapes of these poor, vulnerable women here in the UK, again, have been attributed to rising hate crime, to rising hatred from the right wing, infecting those who are, I would say, themselves vulnerable because they have mental illnesses or whatever. They are vulnerable. They are easily manipulated into causing atrocities, causing outrageous assaults, etc. Unfortunately, it's this massive, multilateral, broad brush attack from every level, whether it's in the media, right down to criminals on the street, attacking our community, attacking our Sikh community. What is the answer to this? There is no magic bullet. There is no simple pill that can be taken to solve this in one thing. It is, sadly, all we can do is keep highlighting what's going on, is trying to get down to the root causes. And many of these root causes are, as I often say, firstly, it's illegal immigration. It's uncontrolled immigration. But it is also the efforts of the Indian state. It is the efforts of the RSS and Hindutva, who are using that as their weapons of choice to then create chaos, create anarchy, and create anti-Sikh hatred. So we've got to get to the root cause of these, and then in turn we've got to highlight these root causes up the political ladder, up through our local democratic representatives, whether it's our local MPs or whatever, to get them to wake up to what is behind this, who in turn must lobby our leaders, our parliaments in our respective countries. We can only attack this, unfortunately, it can only be attacked slowly, but we must also highlight it in the media, not just social media, but mainstream media, is lobby, lobby, lobby. Get out there, be seen, be heard, and get talking to people, trying to explain what are the root causes of this, and that we as a community are under attack, etc., etc. So, James, I find this very tragic, very concerning, that clearly this is a rising problem, and it's a tidal wave, and you can't stop a tidal wave other than you can just mitigate it. You can try and deal with it as best you can. But again, I just find it a very concerning pattern that's unfolding at the moment.
Absolutely, Angus. And again, you're so spot on there in the fact that it is transcending not just borders, but oceans. It is a real pattern that we're seeing in Japan, in Australia, in Canada, in the UK, in the US. I mean, it seems to be this, and I'm not speaking just focused against the Sikhs. I'm talking about just hate crime in general, the immigration issues, the anger, the frustration, the unrestricted, or, unmonitored when it comes to the immigrants flowing in across borders or across the channel from France. And, you can look at it all, and it is terrifying to think about how prominent and how brazen these attacks are getting.
Indeed, and of course the methodology follows a very much an Indian generated methodology, which is the politics of division. It's trying to create division between our communities, and it's working. The sad tragedy is it's working. We are seeing increasing deep fractures between all our various ethnic minorities, between whites and other ethnicities. We're seeing it between Hindus and Muslims, between Hindus and Sikhs, and vice versa. I find it deeply, deeply disturbing what's going on. And even in fact, I can't even leave Christians out of this, because, for example, Harmeet Singh Dhillon, who actually who came out publicly to call out what is actually going on, she not long ago, if you remember, and I reported on this at the time, she actually stood up in one of the original rallies just before Trump was elected. She actually she performed the Ardas, the Sikh prayer, at the beginning of the Republican National Convention. It was last July, actually, a year last July. But even Christian extremists came out and called this out and said, "Oh, they started some pretty unpleasant, bigoted comments right across social media, and in fact, even in the mainstream media, saying it was almost demonic. She said it was part of demon worship. God forbid that a Sikh lady should stand up and actually deliver a Sikh prayer, and she was accused of demon worship of all things. So again, it's extremists on all sides, and again, we highlight this is that 80+% of our society, 90+% of our society are normal, decent people. It is just these fringe extremists. And sadly, these extremists exist in all our communities, all our societies, all our religions. Unfortunately, we're human beings. They all exist. All we have to do, we are many, they are few. We've just got to start pushing back against these extremists and just try and drive their narrative out of the mainstream, because it just does not belong. Because their narrative at the moment, sadly, is winning, James. That's what concerns me.
It is. It's destroying communities that, have lived in harmony for decades, if not longer. And to see this hatred spilling over, it just really makes me sad to think about what's in store for the next generation, Angus.
Indeed. So on that note, let's move to our comments columns. Let's hope we can find some answers from our educated intelligence audience. And Pam Singh starts us off today. Thank you, Pam, for clarifying. We talked about giving, actually donating 10% of your earnings as part of your saver, particularly when you visit the Gurdwara. Thank you, Pam, for your clarification. What you were saying is that you don't have to give offerings when visiting a Gurdwara. You don't have to give anything at all. It's all is accepted in the Guru's house. The message, as you said, got auto-corrected. Don't worry, we've all done it. In fact, we've all done an awful lot worse using autocorrect, James.
Yeah, and then some, yes. We'll leave it at that.
And in fact, there's a great autocorrect with my name, which I'll come on to. There's a comment coming up which actually mentions something, which I'll highlight in a moment. Hold that thought. AKJ, this is the answer. Thank you, AKJ, for this. This sums up really where the answer lies. Khalistan, stands for peace, equality and justice. Khalistan represents truth, fairness and respect for every faith. Note the difference there, you see. I always highlight this difference, James. The Sikh faith respects other faith, unlike many other faiths that certainly don't seem to do that. Khalistan means unity, honesty, dignity for all people. It symbolises compassion, courage, real freedom, the light of strength, strength of equality. Now compare that to what India stands for. It stands for hate, lies, corruption, oppression, genocide, fear. It stands for persecution of minorities, the death of justice. It embodies deceit, cowardice, greed, controlling the Indian media to spread hatred and propaganda, dividing people through manipulation. You decide which side you stand with. Is it Khalistan or India? I know which side we stand with on that one, James.
Absolutely. And, we make no secret that, where we stand, and we want to see an independent sovereign Khalistan. And all willing, it will happen one day, Angus.
Indeed, a great comment, and I think really this comes in some of the podcasts I've done recently, where we've compared, as you've rightly done, AKJ, what India stands for and what Khalistan will stand for. Yeah. It's Khalistan Zindabad. Anybody with 2 brain cells can work out which country would be the better nation to live in. TC. Exactly. TC says, thank you, gentlemen. Fantastic information podcast. This is a podcast I did with Dr. Greywell. We talked about the Pune Pact back in 1932. This was, it was I have to say, it's a pretty fascinating discussion. A decision that was made back in 1932 where effectively the lower caste and the scheduled tribes, the scheduled caste, those who were most vulnerable, let's say, in India, but also who are the most numerous by a factor of, a massive factor, they signed this Pune Pact, which basically Dr. Ambedkar negotiated on their behalf with Gandhi. And it turned out to be one of the biggest democratic mistakes in history, certainly in Indian history, is that it guaranteed the lower caste scheduled tribes, the scheduled castes, it guaranteed them a certain number of seats in the Indian parliament. Sadly, it was only 100 and something seats out of 500. But what that meant was they then couldn't contest any other seats. Also, although they actually number the vast majority of India, even if their democratic will was to take India in a certain direction, they could only have around 20% of the Indian parliament. So they could never, therefore, take control of India. So they locked themselves in this trap, James. It was a very, very devious part. We don't know whether it was deliberate or whether it was just through sheer bad luck. But ultimately, this Pune Pact, it just shows decisions made so long ago can still have such deep resonance even today.
Absolutely. And you see that all throughout history in different regions. And I mean, even decisions made early in Canadian history, when you look at our First Nations and our Aboriginals, and Indigenous peoples. I mean, a lot of mistakes were made. Those were, in most cases, I think, intentional. And I think that a lot of what India has done throughout their history towards the minorities, especially what they viewed as the lower in the caste, I think was quite intentional as well.
And Killer 3 comes back. Killer 3, one of our commenters who quite often flirts with, I would say, with Critics Corner, but doesn't quite get there because actually his comments are quite sensible, even though they don't necessarily agree with everything he says. But Killer 3 says, are these discussions of any use? This is Dr. Greywell, who I interviewed about the Pune Pact. This man is not an academic in the field, and none of this will hold any sway in any political realm. Well, what I would say in Dr. Greywell's defence, he is actually extremely well educated. He's not an academic in the field. He is a medical doctor and is a very highly qualified medical doctor. He's extremely intelligent. But what he also has done, he has spent a lifetime collecting, collating and analysing and researching all the history and culture of the Sikh people. So believe me, he does know what he talks about. Even though he's not technically an academic, he probably knows about as much as most academics in the field know about it. So that's just for your personal knowledge, just so you know. Western nations are struggling and will choose trade first. Yeah, and this is where I seem to agree with you, Killer, on this. Khalistan has no roadmap nor structure that can be taken seriously. Actually, it does, and I think you're going to get a bit of a shock because more and more politicians and leaders are taking the concept more seriously. These talks just seem to be a way for the uneducated Sikhs to vent and be hoodwinked into thinking it's gaining traction. Well, I think the message back to you, Killer 3, is if that is your perception, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but unfortunately for you, it's quite the opposite is the case, is that the whole concept is indeed gaining traction, and more Sikhs amongst the diaspora are realising actually this thing is really happening, and more Sikhs within the Punjab, more importantly, are realising that the whole concept is gaining traction. This is why Amritpal Singh, for example, was elected to the Lok Sabha on a pro-Khalistan ticket. James, it's very clear to us the whole Khalistan juggernaut is gaining momentum.
Absolutely. And, when the India government starts to fear it, as we've clearly seen through their acts of transnational repression, through the locking up of certain individuals with no charges, or fabricated, as I would call them, charges. And I definitely think that you're mistaken on that. I think that it is growing. I think that there is a lot of coordination behind the scenes, and I think that the political structure, layout, and formula that they're going to use, I think a lot of it's already been formulated and actually documented in those plans. So I think that they are a lot further ahead than what people give credit for.
Indeed. And I would say thank you for your comment, Killer. And I do agree with your part where it says Western nations are struggling and will choose trade first. We've got enough evidence, sadly, of that sort of hypocrisy where human rights are being quite blatantly brushed under the carpet for the convenience of trade deals, which in itself is pretty appalling. Ancient Indian, again, almost made critics' corner, but I thought, you know what, I'll spare you the humiliation. These terrorists blow up Canadian airlines. Well, this is in response to the podcast I did with Dr. Singh Sandhi, where we talked about the genocide and all the various genocides against the Sikh people since 1947. Well, Ancient Indian is trotting out the old rubbish line that the Khalistanis were behind the Kanishka bombing of the Air India aircraft, James.
Yeah, and again, look at a lot of the episodes that we've done in terms of how that whole investigation was manipulated, as the investigation teams were ordered not to investigate connections to the India government, whether or not it was a false flag. I mean, there's just so many questions that still lie unanswered in that instance that it's just an unfair characterization to state that it was the Khalistan movement or Sikhs or, any particular group, because we still don't have the truth about what truly happened.
Indeed, and we will still campaign and we'll continue to campaign to reopen the investigation to get the truth out, because we do not know the truth of what actually happened with that bombing. So, Gurpreet Kaur, never forget the 1984 genocide. Of course, yes, the ongoing over the last few days have been all sorts of commemorations right across the world, indeed, to remember the terrible events of November 1984. And the justice to this genocide for the safe future of Sikhs is only Khalistan. As we often say, James, the answer is only Khalistan. And now, when I said, hold that thought about autocorrect, Mr. Angus and Dr. Sandhu for the great discussion. Yes, indeed, autocorrect, sadly, quite often, and this always used to, in the old days of word processors, Word Perfect, I think it was, for those who are old enough to remember Word Perfect. There was an autocorrect, and I once, when I spoke to a secretary back in the old days when we had secretaries, a secretary I spoke to was laughing. She said, I always giggle when my boss types a letter or dictates a letter to you, because my autocorrect always corrects your name, Angus, to Anus, which always gave her a chuckle. And sadly, it might seem to happen here again, James.
Well, at least they're polite, Mr. Angus. I'll pronounce it right. Because most people just call me an outright asshole.
A bit of a bum deal and all those other wonderful backside puns we can come out with.
But I'm proud of it, so it's all good.
Anyway, let's swiftly move on to KJB Singh's comment, which actually is very serious. This is and again, this is around the whole concept of one man's freedom fighters, another man's terrorists. Who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? Well, as KJB Singh rightly points out, Sikhs, primarily during the 80s and 90s, and those terrible times when so many people, particularly Sikhs, were being murdered extrajudicially, is who were actually the good guys in that, and who were the bad guys. And as you rightly point out, Sikhs targeted only the criminals, is who they killed. They basically, in fact, their whole killing movement was a defensive movement. It was trying self-defense against the fact that the whole generation of young Sikhs were under attack, were being extrajudicially murdered. Whereas on the other side, the Hindu fanatics were actually the ones who were just indiscriminate killing. So there is a very clear distinction of who were the good. Well, we know who the good guys and the bad guys in this story were, James.
Absolutely. And as you said, I mean, it's about what the intent, what's behind the killings. And one is self-defense and preservation of a culture and a religion and their people. And that's plain and simple what it comes down to at that point.
And we rush into our final set, and we need our regular reminder to our poor viewers. Navjot Singh Datla, thank you for your comment. You keep writing Sikh on the subtitles. Why? It's Sikh. Yes, well, we have to frequently remind people in our audience who might not realise this or are new to the channel. We don't control the subtitles. They are automatically generated by YouTube. And of course, the pronunciation of Sikh, Sikhs here in the UK are pronounced Sikh across North America. And of course, the AI that generates the subtitles interprets Sikh as S-I-C-K, as you have seen. We don't control it, James. Unfortunately, this is a reminder we always have to send out regularly. So Navjot, apologies. Of course, you know what we mean, but we don't control the subtitles.
And we have noticed that they are starting to pick up on the nuances of the conversation or the sentence. So I think that in the next 6 months to a year, I think we'll see that systems catch up on that.
Fingers crossed. So, but until then, our apologies. There's nothing we can do about it, but we hope you can understand that. And I'm sure you can interpret what it's supposed to mean, which side it's supposed to mean. Stay safe. Now, this is a worrying comment. My comments disappeared. How unusual! Surprise, surprise. It must be them. I don't think they're happy about it. Yeah, and I think this highlights the fact that we do know that comments do magically disappear. But also, James, what I've noticed recently, the stories, the perspectives that we've done recently, that we had a really anti-Indian government bias, where there's been a huge sort of the stories have been primarily attacking Modi, the RSS, Hindutva, etc. Those videos are very noticeably down in numbers, down in views. So very clearly that those videos, specifically where we attack the Indian government, are being throttled.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done several runs on that to see when we are being, I forget the term for it off the top of my head, but yeah, it's just plain and simple that we are being shadow banned. That's the term.
Indeed we are. So the only answer we can do to this is get our audience, get out there, spread the word, tell more people about us, spread us across social media, on your social media feeds, link us, whatever. It's just we need to spread our own network, and it's you and our audience who really have the main responsibility for that, and we rely very much on our loyal audience for all the work that they're doing. So thank you for all that. And the final sign off of the show goes to Jimmy Gill and Grub AZ, which I assume is Arizona, and Gurpej Singh. Khalistan is coming soon. It is indeed. Khalistan Zindabad. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Khalistan Zindabad. We always like to sign off with that positive note, James.
That we certainly do. And we appreciate everybody who shares the sentiment and tunes in to watch us.
Indeed, we most certainly do. And that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. Do keep your comments coming in. Thanks all of you who sent some really fascinating comments. But do let us know if there's stories that you think we should be covering or there's something we might have missed. Don't forget, you can, of course, email us directly at message@satlogetv.com, where you can talk to James and myself directly if there's anything you want to bring to our attention. But that's it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for all your loyalty. We do appreciate you every day. It's a goodbye from me. It's a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.